What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then just welcome to my channel. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. You will not be disappointed unless you just don't like good content. This video, as you can tell by the title, is going to be a true crime story. And if you're new here, that's just what this is, girl. If you see true crime and makeup in the title, I'm doing my makeup and I'm telling a weird, crazy true crime story. Today's story is about Dennis Nilsen. If you are easily triggered, this one ain't for you. If you have a weak stomach, this video probably isn't for you either, okay? It's very, very graphic. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed, all the people who come back and watch and support my videos, who like, comment, and I appreciate you guys so much. Without further ado, let's just get into the video. So little Dennis was born in 1945, November 23rd. Oh, he was almost a Scorpio. And he was born and raised in Scotland with his two parents, but apparently they had like this terrible relationship, and so they got divorced. Him and his mother moved in with his maternal grandfather, who Nilsen really adored. He loved his grandfather a whole great deal. But unfortunately, when he was just 6, his grandfather passed away, and this devastated him. And actually, the viewing of the body at the funeral traumatized him. It was said that the actual viewing of the body at the funeral is what caused him to go on his little, spree that I'm about to tell you guys about, which I guess it makes sense. Just note that his grandfather, he loved this man, adored this man, and the image of his grandfather at the funeral laying in the casket really stuck with him. It's going to be relevant later on in the story. Moving right along. After his grandfather passed away, his mother remarried and she had a bunch more kids. And despite all his new siblings, Dennis was pretty much still a very lonely child. He was to himself a lot. He felt alone. He felt unhappy. And he also started to feel these homosexual feelings that he just was not comfortable with. This made him very withdrawn. And when he was just 16, he decided, you know what, let me get out of here. He joined the army and became a butcher. That's worth noting too. Yeah, we're going there today. So he was in the army for about 10 years. He left the army after that and decided he wanted to join the police force. He went through the entire program of, becoming a police officer. He was particularly intrigued by visiting like the morgue and viewing of the bodies after they had an autopsy done. That was his thing. Like he was like, yeah, it's the life for me. Now, despite him being an officer and having his desires to view dead bodies like satisfied, he decided that, this ain't for me. Like, granted, I'd have the opportunity to see all these weird, crazy things that I like and it'd be justified. This ain't it. He decided to be a recruiter instead, and that's just what he did. So fast forward to 1975, he is living with his boyfriend, and he is just, comfortable and accepting who he is as a person, a little gay man. Nothing wrong with that. But for whatever reason, he still wasn't comfortable with it, and this really put a strain on his relationship. So his boyfriend left him. Like, he got his shit. He left. He was like, you know what? I'm out. When his boyfriend left, he was pretty much traumatized. Like, it sent him into a downward spiral. He became very depressed. He started to drink a whole lot. And he was just, tore from the flow up that his man had left.
This is all I got. I just want my baby.
He was still struggling with his accepting himself as a homosexual male. And so he was very reluctant to have any kind of relationship with anybody else. He was single for about 18 months before he just decided on one afternoon that he had been drinking his life away, that he was going to go down to the bar and he was going to find him some company at any cost. Like, he was going to get him some tonight. He met 14-year-old Stephen Holmes on December 30th. Holmes was attempting to buy some alcohol at a bar. Of course, he was under the legal age, and so they were like, bruh, no. Dennis took this as his opportunity to lure the 14-year-old back to his home with the promise of drinking booze, and are having a good time. Dennis and Holmes go back to Dennis's apartment where they're drinking and they're listening to music and they're just having a good old time. Now, it's unclear of whether or not they had a sexual encounter, but Holmes did spend the night. Dennis woke up the next morning before him. He saw him sleeping there, looking all beautiful, and he said that he just became overwhelmed with the thought that he might leave him. He did not want the young boy to, get up and go home and have nothing to do with him like his boyfriend did. He just couldn't take the thought of Holmes waking up and being like, I'm out. So to prevent the boy from leaving him, he takes a tie, strangles the 14-year-old in his sleep, and then drowns him in a bucket of water in his bathroom. And then, oddly, he takes the body to the bathroom. Well, no, they're in the bathroom because that's where he strangled him. He puts him in the tub, cleans the body, washes it, placed it back into his bed, and he said that he just thought that there was no more beautiful sight than the cleansed dead body of this young boy laying in his bed. He proceeds then to try to have sex with the corpse, but he's unsuccessful, which I'm not sure why. I never thought about the struggles of having sex with the corpse. He did not go into detail in his accounts of why it didn't work. I don't want to think about why it didn't work. He was unsuccessful, so he mounted the body and rubbed one out. Then he takes a nap and he just, kicks it with the body of this boy the next day. And then he's like, okay, so now what do? I'm stuck with him. Like, okay, he's never leaving me. So he comes up with the bright idea to pull up the floorboards in his apartment. And that's where he stashes this poor young boy's body. Crazy, right? Yeah, my eyebrows don't really match, but whatever. Now, a whole 10 months later, in October of the next year, 79, he met a student from Hong Kong named Andrew Ho. That reminds me of the lady from Friday. And got time and got to go Miss Ho. He meets Andrew Ho at a bar, and he lured him there with the promise of having sex. So Andrew knew to that extent that this is what was expected. Once they get back to the apartment, they do the do, and then crazy ass Dennis decides he doesn't want Andrew Ho to leave him either, so he then tries to strangle him, but Andrew was not going. Okay, his name might be Ho, but he wasn't one. Well, technically he probably was, because they went home to have sex on the first date, but he wasn't weak because he got loose and he reported the incident to the police. But, I don't know what happened with why he didn't, nothing ever came of the charges. I don't know, the police, they questioned Dennis, but he was never charged with anything. It's so weird. 2 months later, in December, a year anniversary to his first murder, he meets a student named Kenneth. Now, Kenneth is a tourist, so they meet at a bar because by now we all notice that's where he likes to pick up his boys. Nilsen learns that he's a tourist, so he's feeling like, hey, this is going to be an easy one. He befriends Kenneth, and he's like, hey, why don't I show you around, show you some landmarks? Kenneth's like, how cool is that, He's down. Dennis lures him back to the apartment. He's like, hey, let's just, let's go back to my place and kick it. I'll cook dinner. We can have drinks. And Kenneth is like, okay, cool. They buy all kinds of liquor. They go back to Dennis's. They're listening to music, and they're just getting wasted, hammered. Poor Kenneth. Kenneth is listening to music. Dennis takes a pair of headphones, corded headphones, of course, because this is 70s, so they didn't have the fancy wireless joints that you probably have. He takes his headphones, wraps them around poor Kenneth's neck, and strangles him. He then removes the headphones from Kenneth, and puts them on, and he said that he filled up his glass full of rum, and he continued to listen to music by himself with the corpse, just chilling. And then he goes to bed with the corpse of Kenneth. The following day, he purchased a Polaroid camera, like the old school joints that pop out the film at the bottom. Those were the cool ones. I had one of those. I want one again. I missed that. Anyway, he poses Kenneth's body in all these weird positions all over his bed, and he takes all these photos of him. Then he lays him spread eagle on his bed. He lays there with the corpse spread eagle. That's so weird, but that's the details of the story, and I don't make the news, I just report it. And he watches television for the next several hours, and then he decides, all right, under the floorboards you go. Literally, that's what he said. He wrapped the body in plastic and put him underneath the floorboards next to his first victim. But he had a really perverse liking for Kenneth, because he kept taking him out, like removing the plastic, removing him from under the floor, and like doing weird, like they're normal things, but it's weird to do with the dead body. Like he would take him out and set him at the kitchen table while he would fix coffee in the morning, right? He would take him out and watch television with him on the couch, like until the body started to decay, and he's just like, oh no, need a fresh one. So next he meets a 16-year-old student who is hitchhiking without his parents' knowledge. Like, I guess he just took off. He hitchhiked. Nobody knew he was hitchhiking. He runs into Dennis, and he is like exhausted. He's hungry. He's tired as hell. And Dennis is like, hey, why don't you come back to my place for a good time, right? The kid accepts, and same old deal. They drink, they eat, the kid falls asleep, and Dennis, sick ass, ties a tie around his neck, strangles him, washes the body. You know the drill. You know what he likes to do at this point. And this boy, he recollected, was the youngest looking that he had ever had, so he thought he was the most beautiful. This one, Dennis recalled kissing and complimenting the corpse. He set it up at the table, of course, where he brings all of his corpses. But anyway, he was particularly fond of this one. Y'all, something is telling me to try to do a cut crease. Like, my eyes are really too small and I put in lids, so I really should stay far away from a cut crease. But my soul is saying, girl, do a cut crease. And I don't know if I should listen. I don't think I should listen. I feel like I should definitely not listen to that. Even though I don't have anywhere to go today, I still want to look cute when this is all said and done. Back to the story. He was very reluctant to put him under the floorboards with the rest, so he stored him in a closet just, for easy access. And so he could take him out and caress him and compliment him and appreciate him. But then he said that he began to bloat, and so the fun was over. He had to put him away with the rest of them underneath the floorboards. And of course, now he is back to square one, looking for love in all the wrong places. Now, inevitably, these bodies under the floorboards start to, they start to stink. They start to decay. It's a whole mess. There's foul odors, and mind you, he lives in an apartment building, so he's having to share this space with other people. They're complaining, and he's just like, it's structural problems with the building. I know, it's terrible. That's like what he's telling the neighbors. It's really bad during the summer months, of course, because, yeah. Anywho, so on occasions when he would uncover the bodies from beneath the floorboards, he noted that the bodies were covered in maggots and pupae. He said that some of the victims literally had maggots crawling out of their eye sockets and mouths. So he decided that he needed to get rid of some of these bodies because, one, he needed more space for the new ones, and two, these ones were just, they needed to go. To try to mask the smell, he started to throw little, car air fresheners down there. He would constantly spray disinfectant spray on the bodies and around the house. He would throw insecticides down there to try to kill off the maggots and flies. And yeah. Now remember, I said homeboy was a butcher and a cook in the army, so this is where those skills kind of kicked in to help him out with his issue of not having space, right? So he started to take the bodies out from beneath the floorboards. And what I don't get is how he could do this. It takes a special kind of crazy to, I'm not trying to touch one little chicken bone if it had a maggot on it. It could be one little chicken bone and one maggot, and Brittney ain't touching it. So I don't know how he brought himself to pull up a whole 5 bodies. Or 4 bodies. I'm losing count already. Nevertheless, he pulls these bodies out from underneath the floorboards and lays them on his kitchen floor, and he gets to work with his butchering skills. He dismembers the bodies with a large kitchen knife. The heads, to remove the flesh, he said that he boiled on the stove to help get the flesh off the bones. He removed the organs, he chopped them down into little pieces and put them into plastic bags for disposal. And then the limbs and the torso he decided to bury in his like backyard, because he was on the first level, so he had like a little mini backyard he shared with everybody else. He took the limbs out there and decided, you know, let me just bury the big parts out here. But of course, having just that little space of a backyard, he runs out of space then too. So homeboy's like, I gotta get more creative. And that he does. He builds a communal bonfire. Anywho, he tells them like, hey, I'm building a bonfire and it's gonna be cool and all of us can use it, right? And so they're excited. They're like, yay, bonfire. And really, it's just for him to burn the bodies, like these body parts, so he can continue his thing. So to disguise, and this is not a tip for some of y'all who really might be trying to learn how to do some shit, but it's just to say, because you know, they say that the smell of burning flesh is like very noticeable. And so to mask that, he would throw like a tire into the mix. Apparently that's what, you know, helped him out. And in one of his diaries he kept, because he kept diaries about this, he noticed 3 children standing watching him like burn. They weren't sure what he was burning because, of course, like I said, it was chopped up, it was in bags. He disguised it. He wasn't just out there burning, you know, throwing legs and arms and feet in a fire. He had it already chopped up and bagged, all that good stuff. He noticed 3 neighborhood children watching him, and he fantasized them dancing around the bonfire, like celebrating him burning these bodies. Like, are you weird or no? So when the bonfire was reduced to ashes, crazy old Dennis would, you know, take a little stick, poke around the fire to make sure there are no like fingers or anything, you know, noticeable, recognizable, you know, just in case the neighbors wanted to come out and burn wood, and you know, you don't want to be found out. So anyway, to cover his tracks and make sure he didn't leave anything behind, he would poke through the fire. And he said oftentimes like the skulls would not burn all the way down to ash, and he would have to take a rake and bang them out to tiny pieces. And so that's what he would do, and then he would go back to his house. So by 81 he had killed a total of 12 people, and he was not done. All of them were not able to be identified, but he was, fast forward to after he's been captured, he was very, you know, cooperative with the police. He was able to detail each murder. He had like little nicknames for them, but he didn't remember everybody's name. And so yeah, Nilsen claimed that he would invite these people to his home, and then he would snap into this crazy killing trance, and sometimes he was able to snap out of it, and some people were able to escape, but most times, you know, people weren't so lucky and they were not able to escape. One of the people that were not able to be identified, he killed in January. He referred to him as a young, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Scot, an 18-year-old he met in a bar. Of course, he lured him back to his apartment with the promise of a drinking contest, or like, I guess the challenge of a drinking contest. And the 18-year-old is like, I can outdrink you, so I'm down, what's up? And so they go back to Dennis's house, and of course he gets the guy drunk and proceeds to strangle him with his tie, cleanses his body. You know his MO by now, you know his ritual. The next day he calls into work and he's like, I'm sick, I'm not coming in. And that's typically what he would do. Like, he would kill, and once he gets up to like 5 bodies, he would just, you know, either take a weekend or take a day off work and be like, yo, I got something to do, I'm not feeling too well. Spend the day chopping up the bodies and preparing them for the bonfire. Dennis summed up his little, I don't know if you can call it a ritual, or his little, you know, his thing is end of the day, end of the drink, end of the person. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, sir. So one day, Dennis isn't even fishing for a victim. He literally opens his front door, and there is this 23-year-old Malcolm Barlow is laying slumped against his front door when Dennis is like, what's the tea? What you doing? What are you doing here? He told them that he was on medication for epilepsy, and sometimes it caused his legs to weaken, and he, you know, I guess he just fell there. He wasn't able to get up, and he was just, I guess, waiting on his legs to kick back in. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, Dennis was actually a good Samaritan that day. Like, he did not kill him. he told him that he needed to, he was going to get him an ambulance. He actually brings him inside, calls an ambulance, and gets him to the hospital. But homeboy returns the next day to thank Dennis. He's like, thank you for being a friend. Which he was just being a good guy. He was just, but unbeknownst to him, Dennis was a crazy, deranged murderer. And so Dennis is just like, you know what? This must be a sign. I'm gonna keep you. He invites him in. They eat. They start to drink rum. And this is where shit hits the fan. The guy falls asleep. Dennis cannot resist himself. He strangles the guy out with his bare hands and stuffs him below the sink, like in that little cabinet, because I guess he hadn't really prepared for this. So he was just like, until I figure out exactly what I want to do to you before I get rid of your body permanently, let me just stick you right here right quick for a second and I'll be back. He stuffs him there, spends a little time with him later, and then, under the floorboards, he went. Now, out of nowhere, the landlord decides he wants to renovate the building, and so he taps on Dennis's door and he's like, hey, I need you out. So Dennis is freaking out. He's like what? Like, this is perfect for me. I have, my little space out back. I have the floorboards I can bury people under. I don't want to leave. So first he downright refuses to leave the apartment. And then finally he decides, maybe this is good for me. Like, maybe this will stop me from being a crazy, deranged murderer. Like, if I didn't have such convenience, I wouldn't do it so much. Because at this point, he claims to really honestly want to be a better person. And he figured that this might help him. So he agrees. He's like, okay, cool. I'm leaving. I'm out. And the landlord, not knowing what a crazy, deranged lunatic he was dealing with, he's like, hey, you don't have to leave. I have an apartment on the top floor that you can take. Because, you've been a great neighbor and tenant. So Dennis is like, say word. Okay, cool. Like, moving out is already stressful and, it's a bit much anyway. But imagine having 5 fucking bodies under the floorboards that you have to get rid of also, on top of packing and moving furniture. So he immediately gets busy dissecting, dismembering, burying, and burning the 5 bodies that he had at the time. He flushes a lot of their organs down the toilet. Like, he is flushing like crazy because of course he doesn't want anybody to get into the apartment, start renovating. Of course they're gonna pull up the floorboards and all that if they renovate, right? He cannot have them finding any piece. He could not leave any stone left unturned. We're now in 1982 and homeboy is living in the top floor of a new building. No access to a backyard, no access to, floorboards that could be easily pulled up, none of that. He's feeling kind of confident on stifling his homicidal behavior. He's feeling like, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm being a better me. New year, new me. However, he was the same old damn Dennis, and he could not fight his urges to, go through his whole little routine of murder. And so he hits the bars, and in a very short span of time, he lures 3 more victims to his apartment, his new apartment, strangles them out, does what he does with the bodies. And of course, now he's faced with much greater disposal, challenges with no garden and no floorboards to tuck them under. So he decides that, I got this stove and this pot, and so we're going to make it do what it do. He boils the hands, the feet, and the skulls of the victims. I don't know why. Then again, I don't know why he does any of the things he does. So let me not try to make sense of it. The rest of the body he cut up into tiny pieces, like as small as he can get them, like organs, intestines, all of that. He flushed them down the toilet because he, that has been successful for him in the past. It's always worked for him before. And this particular building he shared with 5 other tenants. None of them really got to know him well. He didn't allow that. He wasn't studying nobody. Like, he had his company. Look at my ages. Terrible. So one of them in February of 83, he's now been there a year. One of them is having issues with their drainage. Like, I guess they were, their drains were backing up. They didn't know why. So they called out this drain specialist, Dino Rod, and they just want to know, what's up? Why can't I flush stuff? Why is it coming back up? Typical things, like this is not out of the norm. So Dino Rod, they're like, they access the drains from the inside, and they're like, it's nothing going on here, like weird from the inside. So they go outside and access the drain from the manhole, and they uncover like body parts. So they're like, what the fuck? Human remains, like. So of course this is news, like it spreads around the little building quick, because he alerts the police, and so all the neighbors are talking about it. They're like, oh my god, it's rotting human remains in the drains. And so when word got to Dennis, he was just like, what? I forgot exactly what his remark was, but it was kind of like, oh my god, what kind of deranged stuff is this? As if it's not him. Like, how crazy. So his neighbors is like, yeah, man, they're going to do a whole investigation. The police will be back tomorrow. I don't know how exactly the conversation went, but it was said that an investigation was to be done, that the proper authorities have been alerted, and they were going to come out and, really, I guess, pull everything out of the drain, do a whole investigation, as they should. Duh. Dennis plays it cool, but at night, in the middle of the night, he goes down into the manhole himself, trying to retrieve all of the remains. And of course the neighbors, like, they're all suspicious, because they're kind of like, it's not many of us, it's only 6 of us, so it has to be one of us, right? They're all on the lookout, and they see him in the middle of the night down there. So of course they like, look at this motherfucker, gotta be him. The next day he goes to work, and he tells his coworkers jokingly, like, if I'm not here tomorrow, I'm either gonna be sick, dead, or in jail. And the coworker thought it was kind of weird. Anyway, the neighbor that saw him that night reported him to the investigators, like, hey, I saw Dennis down in the manhole last night. It gotta be him, right? The detectives go to Dennis's apartment and ask to question him, and he's just like, yeah, come on in. Of course, he's familiar with the smell of rotting, flesh. I mean, even if he wasn't, if somebody's been flushing rotting human remains down a toilet, right? You walk into their house and you're investigating, and you smell this, you're gonna know, like, hey, something ain't right here. So anyway, the investigator was like, something ain't right here. Dennis knew the jig was up. He didn't even try to fake it. He was just like, look, what you're looking for, it's right over there. Points them in the direction of these bags and suitcases that are full of human remains that he had not gotten a chance to dispose of properly. I mean, properly by his definition, They found 2 whole human heads and other large body parts, several bags of tiny chopped up human remains. He is arrested, of course, immediately. He's brought down to the station. He's very cooperative. He gives them a very detailed account of his murder spree. He had killed a total of 15 people, 15 young men. He also admitted to the attempted murder of 7 others he had either, he said he had snapped out of the trance, or they just pretty much escaped. I'm gonna use a bright color pink, because that's what the men's like. At no point did he show any, oh, girl, no, we're not doing that. Fuck what the men's like. Now my lip is stained. Not even all over. It's like, anyway, he showed no remorse. He was very eager to assist the police, almost like he was proud of his work. He took them back to his old apartment. He showed them his bonfire. He kind of like bragged on his actions. He gave a full infection. What? He gave a full-on confession and sat in prison while his trial pended. Why did I put on all this lip gloss? So while he was sitting up pending his trial in prison, he wrote a total of 50 notebooks full of details of these total of, 15 plus 7 is 22. Yeah, 22 encounters with these men that he either killed or that got away. He drew, and this is not funny, but it's just so ridiculous and weird. Like, he drew what he referred to as sad sketches. They detailed the mistreatment of some of his victims. His trial comes up and he is charged with 6 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder, which he pled not guilty to everything, citing his diminished responsibility due to like a mental disability. Pretty much he said he was crazy and he just couldn't help his crazy. Like, the prosecution, he had already set them up with everything they needed. He had given them all of the evidence they had to use against him. They used his notebooks, they used his drawings, they used his confession, all of that. And it took over 4 hours to read his notebooks verbatim to the jury. Like, that's how much he had told on himself. But in his mind, he was like, even still, it's cool because I could just say I was crazy and I should be able to, you know, we could still swing this. We could just say I was crazy. That's pretty much what he told his defense attorneys. Like, you know, I was out of my mind. Obviously, I'm crazy. Like, chill, we got this. They have the testimony of 3 victims that had escaped, obviously, because it couldn't be the testimony of 3 that didn't escape. Like, duh. All of them had the exact same story. They were lured back to his apartment with the promise of drinking or a meal or a good little night of romance. Okay, they got there, they drank, they listened to music, he fed them, tried to strangle them, they got away. Same exact story. Now, Nilsen's defense tried to undermine the testimony of them saying, you know, well, they came back on their own free will and we had sex. Like, it was consensual, but girl, the strangling, that part of it is the crime and that wasn't consensual. So that didn't work. Prosecution also had all of the physical evidence, like the cutting board that he used to dissect the victims, the knife used, photographs, because, you know, he had the little Polaroid camera. They had all of the photographs he had of the bodies. Crazy. They even have the boiling pot and pans that he used to boil the skulls, hands, and feet, and that is actually on display at a museum, the Black Museum at Scotland Yard, which, call me crazy, but I kind of want to visit. Oh, if you watch Black Mirror, there was an episode of like this museum. I don't know if it was called the Black Museum or what, but it was a museum of like this kind of stuff used in like by serial killers and like weird stuff like this. It was a really good episode. Check it out. I think it was like season 1. I don't know, but I didn't know it was a real thing. Like, I thought it was just for the show, but apparently that's a real thing. So, you know, I'm gonna check that out. The defense relied heavily on the testimony of 2 psychiatrists that argued that his troubled childhood and the trauma by seeing, you know, his grandfather in that casket, because you know how so this is why that's relevant, right? If you hadn't put it together by now, he loved his grandfather so much, he admired him, he saw him in the casket. Remember, that's what he did to his victims. Like, he killed them because he was scared of them to leave him, like his grandfather left him by death. And then he would wash the body and lay it in the bed, take pictures of it and admire it like he did. Well, he didn't do this to his grandfather, but you know, of course, after he died, he was washed, put in the casket all pretty and nice. It was kind of freakishly recreating this childhood memory. I don't know. I hope I explained it right. But anyway, that's what the first psychiatrist, Dr. James McKeith, was trying to put forth. Like, and that's why he should not be held responsible, because he had a diminished responsibility because he just couldn't help it. But under cross-examination by the prosecution, they actually got James McKeith to retract his statement about him having a diminished responsibility. Homeboy folded under pressure, so they were down to 1 psychiatrist. The second psychiatrist argued that he could not be held accountable for premeditation, that his outbursts were like sporadic and unpredictable, therefore he could not be held accountable in the aspect of premeditation and all of that. And his explanation was said to be like so above everybody's head that pretty much after he explained it, everybody was sitting there like, what? Like, it was just too complex for them to understand. The prosecution called a 3rd doctor to refute the claims of the first 2, who had actually spent a considerable amount of time with Dennis, and he said that Dennis was in his right mind, that Dennis was very manipulative with some signs of mental abnormality, but nevertheless very cognizant of his actions, and so he needed to go to jail. After all this time, the judge pretty much was like, you know what, jury, I know all of this can be confusing. I'm a little confused myself, but a mind can be evil without abnormality. Is that the case? And it's kind of like, girl, we knew that was the question before this even started. Like, that's what we were trying to get the prosecution to tell us. Like, is he abnormal or is he not? Because if there is no abnormality, then he's responsible for everything. He needs to go all the way to jail forever. But if there is not an abnormality, he couldn't help it, then we need to put him in a hospital. So the jury was pretty much like, girl, we just got kind of nowhere. They retired without a verdict on November 3rd, 1983. And they were unable to reach a unanimous decision. So the judge was like, okay, what is the majority? Like, I'm going to accept a majority verdict on this one so we can just be done. And so the majority ruled that he was guilty and responsible. And so he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for at least 25 years. And old Dennis Nilsen died in prison he died in prison last year in 2018. And that is pretty much it. That's the end of old Nilsen's story. And therefore, this lighting is like, my lighting is really out to get me today. And therefore, that's the end of this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down below. Let's talk about the video. Comment down below. Subscribe if you haven't. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.